musicians, welcome to a special year-end edition of The Musician's Musician. I am your host, Nick Costa, and I know I'm only a few episodes in, but I thought I'd switch it up for a bit at the end of the year and just go over 10 of my favorite albums of 2024. Now, I want to say that while I do have one very clear favorite this year, and anybody who follows me on Instagram or knows me as a human living in 2024 knows what that one is, but this list can pretty wildly change just as far as the rankings go, so don't hold me to 2 through 10. I'll be posting my 30 favorite albums of the year on the socials as well after this is done, but this one is just going to be a little bit more in depth about those 10 top ones that I listen to the most. Before we dive into the list, I just want to say thank you to everybody listening and reaching out saying that you're enjoying the podcast. It's been a really fun experience in 2025. Already has so many exciting guests. I really can't wait to see what this year will bring for the podcast. And on top of that, I have 2 albums that are basically entirely finished. And I was looking back at my notes, and I think I might have even a third going. So that's exciting. I know for sure which one will be coming out first, and I think that it's the best thing I've ever done, and I'm very excited to share it. So all that being said, I'm very excited for what's coming 2025. Please, if you can, just, subscribe to the podcast, share stuff when I post it, go to the socials, anything you can do to engage with what's being posted is so helpful, especially when I'm just getting this thing started up. So now that that's all out of the way, let's get into it. At number 10, I have Peel Dream Magazine's Rose Main Reading Room. I want to start by saying that in 2023, I started just browsing new releases in Apple Music and downloading anything and everything that had artwork that I liked. I was very literally judging books or albums by their covers. And what I'll say is this: it very rarely ever steered me wrong. I just listened to so much music that I never would have heard before, only based on that practice over the past 2 years, and it has been really, really helpful. And this album was kind of one of those moments. I saw the artwork and thought, that's probably something I'm going to like. And it was. This album is like a 2010s indie folk revival in the best way. You immediately hear the Sufjan Stevens influence, but then you get a little afternotes of like Andy Schauf in the production, or Grizzly Bear with like all of the harmonies. I'm also a big sucker for a lyric that will make me laugh, not necessarily in like a Weird Al way, although I will admit I've listened to my fair share of Running with Scissors or Bad Hair Day. This album is just full of like clever moments that just get a little bit of a chuckle, maybe because it's highly relatable, or it's just kind of a funny thing to toss into a song. For example, there's a song that says, "We will have a big full room. Lindsay is the first one who will play. I sit right behind her every May. She likes Grieg, Scarlatti, and Green Day, but we go to different schools." And when I heard the Green Day line, I was pretty in. I spun this one a lot, and if you're a super fan of Sufjan or other 2000s indie folk, I highly, highly recommend this one. Number 9, I have The Smile Cutouts. I don't understand the people begging for a Radiohead reunion when we have The Smile right here. It's reminding me of High Fidelity when Jack Black is walking a customer around the shop who is complaining about how he has all of the Echo and the Bunnymen records. And then Jack Black's character says, "Well, how about the Jesus and Mary chain?" And the customer's like, "They always seemed." And Jack Black goes, "They always seem what? They always seem really great is what they always seemed. They picked up where your precious Echo left off, and you're sitting complaining about no more Echo albums. I can't believe you don't own this fucking record." That's The Smile to me. Everything they've done would fit in perfectly to Radiohead's catalog. It's almost as if it has the same damn songwriters in the band. I know people hate on The King of Limbs, and I will never in my life understand that hate. But this album feels like the perfect in-between for The King of Limbs and Rainbows. It's creative, it's wild, it's beautiful, it's dry, but it's also ethereal. It's so many things globbed into one somehow cohesive, beautiful masterpiece. If you like Radiohead and you aren't listening to The Smile, what are you doing? Number 8, I have Medium Build's Country. If we're talking about lyrics, it's hard to find a better lyrical album this year. Medium Build or Nick Carpenter is so incredibly honest in all of his songwriting, and that honesty, I think, can really seep into the music behind those words. There's a lot of power in these songs, even when they may be restrained a bit musically. There's a bit of David Bazan in the way these songs are delivered, maybe not necessarily sonically, but in the way that they feel, if that makes sense. It feels like you're learning a lot about the artist when you listen to these songs. Sometimes when an artist is writing from a character perspective, you can still sense emotion, but it doesn't hit the same way as somebody writing from personal experience. These songs are just so brilliantly written. It's catchy pop, sensible tunes, creative melodies, great production, and Nick's been at it for a while, and it certainly shows here. At 7, I have Marika Hackman's Big Sigh. Talk about an underrated album. I didn't see many lists note this one at all, and that's wild to me. Big Sigh has somehow managed to mix Radiohead's Kid A with Nick Drake's Pink Moon in a way that is so beautiful and unique and creative. The opening track, The Ground, is definitely in the Kid A realm with heavily affected vocals, glitchy synths, and electronic drums, but it still feels so natural. The last time I felt this way about an opening track was when I heard the album Both Ways Open Jaws by the French indie pop duo The Dough. And if you haven't heard that album yet, that's an all-timer. Pause this episode and go listen to that album, I beg you. But when I heard that opening track from The Dough, it felt so fresh, but also so familiar. As the album progresses, it's definitely more in the Nick Drake realm of songwriting, but it still incorporates these interesting, calmly psychedelic moments. Imagine you're sitting on your porch on a perfect summer day. It's not too hot. It's not too humid. There's birds singing. There's no cars driving by. It's just calm, the sounds of the world moving slowly. And oh yeah, you happen to have just eaten a mushroom a couple hours ago. That's this album. At number 6, there's a tie. It's Willie Nelson, of course. He released 2 albums this year, The Border and Last Leaf on the Tree. It really wouldn't be a year-end list for me if Willie wasn't mentioned. If you don't know about me and my love for Willie Nelson, I'll do a quick backstory. Probably 3 or 4 years ago now, I decided to do a deep dive, something I do a couple times a year on an artist that I have a blind spot for, and I tried to listen to every single Willie Nelson album in order. The main issue I faced was that he currently has 153 albums. At the time I started, I think he had something closer to 145 or so. But the thing is that once I dug into his catalog, I loved each album more than the last. He became my all-time favorite. My audio safety blanket in a way. I can and have listened to Willie Nelson anytime I don't know what to put on. He's been my top artist on those year-end wraps every single year since. I feel like since I started digging into his tunes, he's been having one of his best eras. A Beautiful Time is very likely in my top 10 Willie albums, if not the top 5. These 2 albums are of equal quality. The Border has a couple more original songs. It has a couple of covers, but for the most part, it's originals. It has the same immaculate production that most of his newer albums have, which I think sounds great. It's funny, it's devastatingly sad. It's everything you'd want from a Willie record. And then Last Leaf hits. It's entirely covers for that album, which is not unusual for Willie. You have like Stardust and many other albums of his that are entirely covers. But this one was produced by his son, Micah, who is definitely more in the cosmic country vibe, which makes it a really unique album for Willie. It has 2 Tom Waits covers, which already seals the deal for me. Then you have Beck covers. You have Flaming Lips. It's really interesting and just a fantastic listen. If It Wasn't Broken is such an earworm, and you have been warned if you pop that one on that will be stuck in your head for a while. At number 5, we have Leon Bridges' Leon. Leon Bridges, man. Talk about each album being more interesting than the last. It has been so incredible to hear him progress as a songwriter. From his first album that felt like a continuation of where Sam Cooke left off, to his recent work that stands up against anything that Al Green or Marvin Gaye was doing, it has been such a great progression. This album is such a great showcase of who he is as an artist now. Even just from the opening track, When a Man Cries, you just get hooked. Peaceful Place might be the best song he's ever done. There's moments of pop genius here. There's moments of deep emotion. Such a wide spectrum of influences going on, and they all work just so beautifully together. I feel like not liking Leon Bridges is a major red flag. Number 4, we have Laura Marling's Patterns in Repeat. This album absolutely blew me away. I've always enjoyed Laura Marling's records, but it wasn't until this one I was fully hooked. The opening track, Child of Mine, hit me like a freight train, and I don't even have kids. There's a line in that song that says, "You and your dad are dancing in the kitchen. Life is slowing down, but it's still bitchin'." That's the opening line of the album. It's so simple and kind of anti-poetic, but such an incredibly beautiful sentiment. It's a great way to summarize aging and embracing the progression you make as a person. The songs No One's Gonna Love You Like I Can and Lullaby are some of the most gorgeous melodies I've ever heard in my life, and that is without hyperbole. It's up there with anything Randy Newman can do, and I swear to God, if you are thinking the Toy Story guy right now, I'm going to freak out. Go listen to the song Marie, or go listen to Sail Away right this instant if you just said that in your head. Laura Marling is such a brilliant musician and songwriter, and I really think that this is the best thing that she's done yet. If you have a heart, you will like this one, I promise. Number 3, we have Dawes, Oh Brother. It took me a long time to fully hop on the Dawes train. I love tunes like When My Time Comes and all your favorite bands when it came out, but it wasn't until The Misadventures of Doomscroller that I was fully on board. That album is insane and really shows off just how incredible these guys are. Did it help that I had done a deep dive of both the Grateful Dead and Steely Dan before listening to the jammiest album yet? Probably. Oh Brother takes all of those wild elements of Doomscroller and condenses them into an easier to digest pop album. Mr. Los Angeles is hilarious. Surprise has this movement that feels like being stuck in the mud. I don't really know how else to describe it, but it's great. House Parties is just an incredibly fun song too. It was an album that when I listened to it for the first time, I had to listen to it in full 2 more times. Not necessarily to better understand it, but because I craved it. That guitar work, the killer production by Mike Viola, who also put out an incredible record called Rock of Boston this year. I feel like this one was quietly released and destined to be slept on. Number 2, we have Father John Misty's Mahashmashana. I have really, really loved everything that Mr. Tillman has done. Some folks kind of fell off around Pure Comedy. Others may have fallen off around Chloe in the Next 20th Century. But I have really loved those. I thought that they were incredible progressions and showed that you can maintain a unique sound and voice while still branching out and doing something different. Mahashmashana took every element I've loved from every one of his records and mashed them into one incredibly special album. He's never been a stranger to a pop hit here and there, but that's the one thing this album does not have. The shortest song, the ballad that closes the record called Summer's Gone, clocks in at 4 minutes and 17 seconds, which in today's standard is the musical version of the Iliad. The opening track clocks in at 9 minutes and 20 seconds and somehow doesn't feel like it. It's truly a gift to have a song that is just verse, pre-chorus, chorus like 5 times, have it nearly be 10 minutes long, and have it feel like it's probably closer to 3 or 4 minutes. Maybe it's his version of American Pie. Maybe nobody else likes the song American Pie as much as I do, and that's not a good comparison. We'll never know. In a catalog that has so many albums that could be seen as his masterpiece, I think 10 years from now, people will look back at this one and say, that's the one. And at number 1, and no surprise to anybody, Gillian Welch and David Rawlings, Woodland. If you know me at all, this is not a surprise. Time, the Revelator was such an incredibly important record for me. So when I saw that Gillian and David were putting out a new album, they're first using both of their names, I literally counted down the days till that was released. Usually with albums I look forward to, I don't even listen to the singles. kind of like how when there's a movie you really want to see, you avoid the trailers because they're packed full of spoilers. This time I caved and I listened to Empty Trainload of Sky when it was released. I immediately said, oh, this album is going to be good. And I was right. Once every couple of years, there's an album that comes out and I think, there was my life before this album, and then there was my life after this album. And this is one of those albums. I remember hearing the song What We Had for the first time and just stopping what I was doing entirely. My brain had shut down. When that chorus kicked in for the first time, nothing else in the world existed. That pedal steel crying, those strings. This is the exact thing I've been trying to make for so long, and here it is. It's like if Big Star had some twang to it. I still get goosebumps when that song comes on. Not to mention Hashtag or Howdy Howdy, which is still such a beautiful sentiment. The idea that in the next life, no matter where they are or what happens, they'll always love each other and always be able to support each other. It's a very beautiful and perfect closing for the record. There isn't a single moment on the album I would change. It is perfect in every way. And with all of that, that is my top 10 of 2024. Thanks again so much for listening. 2025 is going to be a wild year for this podcast. Even just starting out in January, there's some huge guests. So I'm very, very excited to see what conversations happen there. And please, just do all the subscribing and following on the social media and, anything you can do to kind of pass the word along. Send it to your friend who's a musician. Send it to your friend who just really likes music. Thanks so much. And I'll see you next year.